So this is before the blonde, because
before the blonde tour, one quick drive to North Carolina and back.
And
before the blonde.
Because somebody's going blonde tomorrow, and it's not me.
Me neither. Here's the deal. It's like this. We're making this little trip here just to see if we can still drive. And not only that, but just to drive down the road one more time with not blonde hair. So we're going to have a tour that we're scheduled. It's blondes have more fun. I mean, scratch that. Christians have more fun tour. And it's going to run from starting about April the 4th of 2014 till the Lord says I can't wrestle anymore. And then that's how long that, because hey, we were just talking a while ago, the Bible says that laughter is like a medicine, and you should laugh and have a good time. It's too much to have the weight of the world on your shoulders when you're out, when you're living this life. Remember, this is not a dress rehearsal, nor a practice run, but this is life real. And you talk about reality TV, our lives are reality. So we don't get it. It's hard to get, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So here we go, Rich. We're on our way.
Yep. So I was going to ask Bobby a few wrestling related questions. So I was looking on Wikipedia late last night, and I saw you held, I believe it was the Central States television title. It was somewhere in the Missouri, but you vacated it because you left the territory.
Yeah, I did leave the territory because I about froze to death. As a matter of fact, what happened, we were wrestling out there for Bob Geigel. There was guys like Jungle Jim Starr who wrestled as 666, Bulldog Bob Brown, Colonel Christopher George Buckley Robley III, don't call him Yellow, was the booker and a wrestler. Scott Ferris was there. Ken Wayne under the mask is Tiger Mask.
Yeah, I remember
Ron
that.
Ritchie was there.
Now, you beat a guy named Roger Kirby for that, didn't you?
Nature Boy Roger Kirby, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. You see, I heard Ricky Morton say this a long time ago. Talked about good matches, bad matches. Years ago, all the matches was great, from the opening bell to the final pinfall at the end of the night, because there was tons of professional wrestlers that happened to work, not workers that pretended to be professional wrestlers. You see, when I got into wrestling for one reason, because I love professional wrestling, but not only that, because I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I never wanted to be called a worker. I mean, although that's what we might do, we don't like to, some people want to use the term fake, but fake's a very harsh word. Let's use the word working. It's like, say for example, you beat somebody up in a working way. A lot of these guys that train today, one of the first things they learn is a list of lingo. But you know, where they're failing at is the ideal of getting in the ring and really wrestling. Chain wrestling. That way, when they get out there, you know, it's like what happened the other night there in for LSC. Some J-Bro that shouldn't even be in the ring, and I say that, and I shouldn't really say that they were doing a fundraiser for me, and I appreciate each and every one of them, because hey, I will tell you this, on Friday night, the Friday before, I about broke my neck in West Virginia. As a matter of fact, Falls View, West Virginia, wrestling Christian York. And I was wondering when I hit the mat if I was going to move. And I said to myself, Lord, is this how it's all going to end? Well, thank God I'm up walking, and not only that, talking, but the whole top of my head's got a mat burn on it. And so, say for example, any given time, for any reason, a wrestler can get hurt. But getting back to my story, you need to learn to wrestle. You need to get in the ring and go. That way when the bell rings, there's not just hard slapping. You know, that don't make you a wrestler. Get in the ring, learn to wrestle. It's hard, though, sometimes when people are trained by people that don't know themselves. And then, so what you have is, throughout the world, is a watered-down version of a professional wrestler. Guys, just a suggestion. I'm proud to be a professional wrestler. I know Vince McMahon, who's got all the wrestling money in the world. He don't like to even refer to wrestling, or some of his people, executives, don't like to. But to me, it's professional wrestling. I love it. And I mean, you know, so don't try to take the wrestling out of it. It's a big aspect of it. And, you know, I've kind of waned away from the question.
Well, and just to rehash that story a little bit.
Yeah.
This guy came into the ring at the fundraiser and just...
Yes, that's right.
He just slapped somebody on the back really hard and left.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, his hand came through from the back through his chest and then left a big print there.
Well,
Tom McLean would probably still today, when he rolls over at night, fills that guy's hands.
Well, I was telling Tom McLean he could go with Barry Horowitz's gimmick because he's got the handprint on his back.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, it might be tattooed permanently. Hey, we might have a new way of giving tattoos. It saves ink. You don't have to worry about hepatitis C. You don't have to worry about a clean needle. Just let somebody slap the crap out of you. And there's a print for life. I mean, I know some of the sororities Junkyard Dog had, they heated up some kind of piece of metal, and he had like a G for his sorority. He went to Livingstone College back there in Salisbury, Rich, as a matter of fact.
JYD did?
JYD did, yeah. He graduated from there. Sylvester Ritter lived down in Wadesboro, North Carolina, but he was part of a sorority, and they branded him, you know, which is another way of a tattoo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Wasn't no Double Cross Ranch branding.
No. That's Terry Funk, ain't it?
Yeah, but they had that feud where he put that on Jimmy Hart.
On Jimmy Hart.
Yeah.
Yep, I got you. Jimmy Hart. Yep. So what I'm trying to say, what I was saying was that just because you can do that, don't make you a professional wrestler either. And you know, a lot of guys are wondering. People want to see good matches, and that's one of the biggest. And I was telling the guys the other night at the event, Vince can out the WWE. They can out skyrocket everybody. You know, as far as, you know, the Titantrons and this and that.
Yeah.
But if we get in the ring and when the bell rings we go, then that makes the difference. And I've told my friend that's in a band, Dan Leach, I told him, I said, Danny, the same things with wrestling or baseball, football, or a band. I would rather have a guy who was hungry that knew a little than a guy that was not hungry and knew a lot. Because the guy that's hungry, that knows a little, you see, he's willing to do whatever it takes to make the match work. Or that person's they're hungry to do whatever it takes to make the team, football, baseball, whatever. And that, you know, some other people might think that might be a wrong way of thinking, but I don't think so. It is, you know, when you get out there, man, you got to go.
I mean, look at Daniel Bryan.
Exactly. You know what? Whether the office was behind him or not, the people got behind him and he got over. And see, that's like Tommy and I and a lot of other guys, Rock and Roll Express and them, people like that, and people might not have been the biggest guys out there. But buddy, I'm gonna tell you something, when they got in the ring and the action got hot, it got just right for a lot of us. And that's the same way with Tommy and I, as well as Daniel Bryan. I was watching him the other day on television. I was just thinking, you know what? He's not a giant of a man. He's my size. And I said, man, I'm proud of him. Because I was the same way, and Tommy Rogers and a lot of guys our size. I mean, you know, if we all look the same, what's the big deal going to be? Say, for example, if all the guys in the territory have bleach blonde hair, well, then if I'm a heel, I'd have dark hair, because then that's something different. You understand what I'm saying, Rich?
Yeah.
Or if everybody's got a mask on. I remember one time I went to Georgetown, Kentucky, when I was about 16 years old. Flying Fred Curry took me down there, and I got down there and I was going to wrestle Flying Fred Curry. He had wrestled for the Sheik, him and his father, Wild Bull Curry, and they were big names in Ohio, Michigan, Texas, different places, as a matter of fact. And what happened was, he would take me to be his opponent. That way he didn't have to worry about some guy, you know what I'm saying, messing him up or whatever. Well, when we got down to the town, I was going to wear a mask, but I looked, and everybody in Georgetown back there was putting on masks. So I said, man, forget that. So that's where I developed the crazy Bobby Fulton gimmick, and just started. I took a little bit of Wild Bull Curry, who I'd wrestled at 16, 17 years old, a little bit of the Sheik, the original Sheik, and then a little bit of my own stuff and a couple of other people, and put it together and shook it up and turned crazy Bobby Fulton loose there in Georgetown, and wrestled a guy was partners with Joe Cagle. We were the Beauty and the Beast team, and as a matter of fact, he wrestled also, I think, as Steve Dupree, but also Mike Dupree was our manager, and I had a big feud running with another guy that passed away, was Bob Owens, who wrestles Cowboy Bob Black. I'll never forget, I wrestled him down there. And talk about getting beat up. He took his cowboy boot off, and he didn't have no wrestling heels on him. They were regular heels. And he beat me in my head so hard that no blood was coming out of my head. And I was black and blue all over my head and forehead, but you know, a lot of guys like that stuff. I wasn't too crazy about that. But I remember going to school the next day, Rich, thinking back on it, because I was in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and on the weekends I'd be out wrestling professionally. And you know, like you've seen, you made copies of the DVDs of me wrestling up in New York. As a matter of fact, that's Fred Curry got that connection for me, Flying Fred Curry. But I always admired Flying Fred Curry. I thought he was a great baby face, and he was like us in a lot of ways. I say he wasn't real big, his dad wasn't either. But man, it left a lasting impression. As a matter of fact, a lasting impression, the people still talk about him today. And I mean, that was from the 70s, but like Wild Bull Curry was there probably the 50s, 60s, and 70s, maybe the 40s, I think the end of the 40s. Flying Fred Curry started in the 60s, 70s. I think he wrestled a little bit in the 80s. He's got a son that wrestles, Rocket Curry. I'd like to wrestle Rocket the Third, Rocket Flying Fred Curry the Third one time. I wrestled the Grandpa, Wild Bull Curry. I wrestled Flying Fred Curry so many times I can't count. Now all I want to do, and that's a good thought, I want to wrestle the Rocket Fred Curry one time, just one time. I'm 53 years old, but you know, Rich, you noticed I'm dropping weight, I'm training. My sons, I just seen or noticed the same thing. I'm training. It takes getting that eye of the tiger. I know that might be cheesy to say that, but it's something that you just finally wake up and say, man, I got to do it while I'm getting good. I did it at 40, and they said I was in the shape of an Olympic athlete. At 53, although, which is a terrible thing, and I guess what's really even making me want to do it is because I don't know what's happening totally with my eyesight. And, you know, out of this eye, it's very limited. I was totally blind, and it's very limited. On this side, they said I've got hardening of the arteries, but I'm praying hard. But hey, that would be a treat if somehow I could wrestle Rocket Fred Curry the Third. That would be cool. That would be cool.
Were you crazy Bobby Fulton before you had that mass tag team with Lenny King, or was that after?
I was crazy Bobby Fulton before that, and me and Lenny King, who later was Cousin Junior, who's passed away now. Dale Mann.
He was also Moondog Cujo, I believe.
Yeah, he was, and he was also later on. He was even.
Wasn't he Bloody Ox Brody or?
Yeah, Bloody Ox Brody, and then he was one of the Hogg brothers, wasn't he?
I'm not sure about that.
I think he was up in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I'm not J.R. Hogg, and I think he was another Hogg. I don't know for sure, but yeah. No, that was after the fact. I started wrestling there. I'd lost weight. You see, when I started in wrestling at 16, I started setting the ring up at 11. But at 16, most of the guys were beefy-looking guys. Very few were bodybuilders. Some looked like they lifted weights. I mean, my goodness, Ivan Koloff was probably 5'10". He was 300 pounds, but he looked solid. I mean, Bruno Sammartino, I mean, to me, and you know, it's just like Kevin Sullivan, for example. Not a tall guy, but man, he is a fire plug, built just like what I would picture a wrestler. Great big tree trunk legs. About every time I see him, he's still training. He told me, he said, Mark Lewin's about 70 years old and still training hard. But going back to what I was saying was, back then, the wrestlers was more beefy instead of built, you know, and especially they're stressing today the real lean look, you know,
yeah,
and everything. But I started back then, but when I lost some weight, I got under a mask. I was wrestling for Del Man. I always dreamed of this team under the mask called the Sensuous Heartbreakers, and so we did that. And Lanny Keene became my partner. I had another one too, named Jack, that was Del Man's cousin, or yeah, it might have been his cousin. I can't remember. He came from Irondale, Indiana, down. But yeah, Lanny Keene was later on. He was
cousin.
Yeah, cousin Junior. Cousin Junior.
Yeah, cousin Junior.
Yeah.
Cousin Luke was that Gene.
He just passed away. Gene Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he was also the Mongol.
The Mongol, and he was also with Kevin Sullivan's crew with a half-shaved head.
Was that the Army of Darkness
His
thing?
name was not Nikolai, but some name like that. I can't remember what it was.
Terry Sims was actually remembering some old Billy Joe Travis memories the other day. I don't know if it was close to the anniversary of his passing or not, but do you have any Billy Joe memories?
Well, I knew him when he very first started. As a matter of fact, I think he came to Georgetown to wrestle.
Billy Joe Travis is what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I said, wasn't it?
I know, but I'm just making it clear to the camera.
But Billy Joe Travis came to Georgetown, I think. Was probably Georgetown. And I'll tell you what, Del Man ran Kentucky for years. Kentucky Championship Wrestling. Him and Chuck Connors was a team. They had Joe Ball and Billy Helm, masked guys that were policemen out of Louisville. I think were the Heavenly Bodies. Big muscular guys. Somebody told me both of them's passed away now. I'm not for sure, but Eric Embry was there wrestling as Don Starr. There was Ron Starr. The son now runs that mountain wrestling.
Yeah, association.
Yeah, his son does. Real nice guy. And Ron Starr was there, who later wrestled as Fazil Dean. And Danny Fargo, Fabulous Danny Fargo, I'll never forget, Rich. He passed away quite a few years ago. And Fabulous Danny Fargo was Aldi Hager from Nicholasville, Kentucky. And man, that guy could go. I mean, he might have been my height, might have little bit bigger than me. But I'm telling you what, he could take the highest backdrops of anybody I could ever see, and I'll never forget. He would fall on that, take a big backdrop, fall. They'd have to stretcher him out and take him to the hospital, and you'd think it was over. He couldn't move. He'd be back for the main event, ready to wrestle.
So he was kind of like a Mick Foley back then?
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, well, Mick Foley took it to levels which
shouldn't have been taken.
Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't have been taken. I have all the respect in the world for Mick Foley. As a matter of fact, I showed you a poster where I had him wrestle Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert up in Virginia. You remember?
Yeah, and then you shared that video with me of him against Shane Douglas.
Yeah,
that you promoted.
And then he wrestled quite a few times. As a matter of fact, I seen him later, and he told me, he said, "I'll never forget when I drive through Southern Ohio wrestling for you down there, Bobby." But man, it was unbelievable the beating he put himself through. I just don't know. I don't know. Things were accidents that helped his career. When he lost his ear in Japan, not that helped his career, but that made him invincible. Then the things where Rich the
cage,
fell through the cage. You know, got knocked off on that table.
Well, I heard the second time was an accident.
Yeah.
Like when he went through the cage.
Yeah. I believe it. I believe
Because they said Terry Funk came out to see if he was still alive.
Sure, I wondered myself. I mean, my goodness. You know, he can walk because they said he's doing comedy, and I say more power to him. And he used to run down the apron of the ring and drop that elbow out on the floor. Man, that was some awesome looking stuff. It made a believer out of me, you know, as far as that goes. But we got to talking about Cax. We was talking about Billy Joe Travis, Danny Fargo and him. But Billy Joe Travis, I think, showed up. We worked out with him and wrestled. And I worked out with him and everything. And he liked I'm not just saying it because it's me, but he always told me that. He liked my style of wrestling or whatever. And the punch I threw, which used to, me and a couple other guys might have threw at Lanny Poffo and I think Bobby Eaton. But I think now the whole business throws it and kicks. And Billy Travis, he started. So at one time there was really only me, Lanny Poffo, Bobby Eaton. Jerry Lawler had another way of taking a punch, which Terry Taylor later did. But now everybody, they can't throw a punch or kick without slapping themselves. You know, man, they get caught every time. People can see it. Think, my goodness, I'd kick them harder too if I slapped myself that hard.
Yeah, I remember on commentary they used, and especially in the USWA, they used to say Billy Joe had the greatest right hand in wrestling.
That's exactly right, because he liked Bobby Fulton's punch. And I'm not saying that, I'm not tooting my horn, but he loved Bobby Fulton's punch. And he mastered it. And I'm just telling you what he told me. And I mean, that was the truth, and that's a compliment. And he's another guy that died way too soon. I mean, my goodness, you know, it was just tragic, you know.
I remember I was in college when I heard about it. It would have been like the late 90s, early 2000. And I remember one of the last matches that he worked was against Lawler, and I think it was in Kentucky somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, well, see, ain't that funny? Isn't that funny how he started out there in Kentucky? I think he might have been from there.
Yeah, Gary Mize is his real name.
Gary Mize. Bo James could tell you all about him. He knew him like the back of his hand. I think he lived with him for a while in Memphis. I knew him as Billy Travis. That's all I ever knew him. I may have knew him as Gary Mize at the beginning, but I can't remember. There was another guy named Johnny. I named him. I ended up naming him Troy Dillon.
Is that Johnny Reeves?
Johnny Reeves. He wrestled there too.
He's on your Facebook.
Yeah, he wrestled there too. As a matter of fact, I brought him to Nashville when I was there. Me and Tommy was there in Nashville when Tony Falk came over. And let's see, Bill Dundee was the booker, and Jerry Gray was there. Pat Rose and Tom Pritchard, along with Sensational Sherry, was the Heavenly Bodies. See, Jim Cornette thought he was the first one to name Tom Pritchard that, but we named him that prior to that. And what a great tag team they were. You know, Pat and Tom with Sensational Sherry, every one of them. It's funny how when you're starting out and you're young and you're hungry, and how you see guys, how they go, they develop in their own, they become stars in their own right in different areas and things like that. I mean, you know, Dr. Tom Pritchard, of course, Pat Rose in wrestling, and of course, Sensational Sherry, Scary Sherry, whichever one of different Sherrys you want to call her. What was she? Was Savage?
She was Sensuous Sherry in WCW. She was Sensational, and then of course Beefcake nicknamed her Scary Sherry.
Yeah, Scary Sherry. But what wasn't she with Randy Savage for a while?
Yeah, she was just like Queen Sherry. I guess.
Sherry, yeah. She was a great wrestler.
Yeah,
she was really a great wrestler. She was a nice lady. And there's another one that passed away way too soon, you know.
You mentioned Jerry Gray. He's actually, I was reading, he trained Billy Gunn.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Gray has shows, I think, all over. Or someone told me that. I bought some tapes off of him one time. Some old big-time wrestling tapes from the Detroit days.
What's your thoughts about, because I was telling you, I saw a interview where I think it was Kevin Nash, and I mean, you don't have to say it like you're on a tirade against him or anything.
Oh, I'm not. I met him. Can I tell you something? I met him for the first time.
Yeah.
in New York at the big event.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was going through my eye problems, and I think there was the first time I mentioned it. But when I got on that plane in Columbus, I thought the pain that I was having in my head was from the chair shots, and that's not been rolled out yet. But I thought when I would go up in the air, since I hadn't flown a long time, I understand that, you know, because the pressures and stuff like that. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but I didn't know if I was gonna land alive in Pennsylvania or not. And I went up, and I was alive, and I said, "Thank you, Lord." But I mean, I was under that much pain and pressure. But I met Kevin Nash, and I don't want to take away from your question. Hold on to it.
Yeah.
But can I tell you what?
Yeah.
It was him and Sean Waltman. I rode over with him to the venue, and I talked to Sean a minute, and Kevin turned around, offered his hand to me, and to me that was really something. I mean, you know, I was kind of out of it more or less when he was doing his stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, what he said was, when they first brought the NWO, and he said this in one of the Legends roundtables, but when they first brought the NWO, he said they were reluctant to put Hogan in it, or they weren't sure about it, because when Hogan cut the promo, he said he thought it was too much like Memphis. And I was just wondering, like,
who
Kevin Nash said he thought it was too much like Memphis.
Well, I'll tell you this. People talk, when I broke into wrestling business and I traveled different territories, everybody made fun of Tennessee wrestling. And the younger guys today don't understand. But I will tell you this, it's hard to argue with 8,000 people coming every Monday night to an arena, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to argue when your TV ratings blow all the rest of the TV programs away in that area. It's hard to argue when you go to Louisville, the same thing could be said. Louisville was always pretty good. Now, Evansville was usually, if my memory serves me right, and I mean, I was just a wrestler, but it always looked about half of what Louisville was. But it was Memphis, Louisville, Evansville, Nashville. There for a while, it was selling out to me about every weekend we were going there. That's when Jarrett had it. And I'd worked in Nashville when Nick had it. And there were some good houses and stuff like that. But with Jarrett and Lawler, the Superstar Bill Dundee and them, they had that place hot. And as a matter of fact, I just seen the Barbarian the other night in West Virginia. And that's one of the first places I met him, because he first had went to San Antonio and wrestled as Tonga John.
Yeah, he did some world class.
Did some world class in San Antonio. Then he came to Memphis, and he became Conga the Barbarian.
Yeah.
And I had a painted up face, because then the Road Warriors was big, you know.
Yeah.
And he told me the other night, he said, oh, it was hot. And it was. We could go to all these little towns and draw money. So here's the thing. When you say it's too much like Memphis, to me, what wrestling is about, the whole ideal of it is, of course we love it and we enjoy it, but it's about drawing people. You see what I'm saying? It's a business. And I'm not saying do whatever it takes to draw a house, but I'm saying it's up to the booker, or what they call the writer today, to be able to put something together enough to make them draw people. It's just like Fabulous Jackie Fargo told me. A lot of times the people thought the first couple of matches wasn't on the up and up. But the main event, the semi-main events was so convincing, they said, my goodness, the rest of it's not real, but this is real. And perhaps the NWO, the people at the beginning thought, man, these guys really had jumped ship. Because you see, here was the thing. When I wrestled for the NWA Crockett's, and we had Barry Windham, Nature Boy Ric Flair, we had everybody there. Dusty Rhodes, American Dream, you name it. Everybody was there. The Road Warriors, Paul Ellering, the list could go on and on and on. I think we even had Bugsy McGraw as the Green Machine, and tons of people. But here's what happened. In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I would sometimes go up and watch the other matches and sit, I guess kind of sit in the crowd. And I'll never forget, this was probably 1988, I remember hearing people sitting up at the top of the building say, this is the farm league for the for the WWF. And they really didn't see me there. That was Crockett's home territory, North Carolina. And you see, the people had already started thinking that. So, with that being said, when people left New York while they were still hot to come to WCW, could you imagine what the mindset was for the public? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Like they're taking a back step?
No, they're not taking a back step. Something must be real here, because why would these guys leave there to go there? You understand what I'm saying?
Now I do, yeah.
That might be something that they didn't look. And I said this before Daniel Bryan, and I mean, The Rock is an amazing wrestler and great, and him and Stone Cold stuff was great. But the last big deal was Stone Cold against Vince McMahon. Everybody, and I've said this to everybody I've talked to, everybody hates their boss. Most people does anyway. They could relate with him. And see, that's what it takes to draw money. So when the NWO, going back to your question, it could have been too much Memphis. Hey, if that was the case, then so be it. Memphis drew money. And as a matter of fact, if you remember, it was one of the last of the promotions left standing at the end.
I believe it was the last. They couldn't compete with the Monday Night Wars, they said.
Right. Well, Memphis was a Monday night town.
Yeah.
And think about it. And Vince and them's got TV, nationwide TV 3 times a week on TV, right?
Yeah.
That makes it tough, because really all their guys are oversaturated to a certain extent, because you see them all the time. Imagine back then, you seen Jerry Lawler on Saturday TV, then you've seen him in Memphis on Monday night. Okay, the people in Louisville, the same thing. But now, the way it is, sometimes they're seeing guys 2 and 3 times a week just on TV alone, right?
Yeah.
So, it just makes it tough.
What's your thoughts about this coming week at the Mid-South Legends?
It's going to be good to see a lot of people there. I mean, it sounds like the whole town's going to be full of nothing but wrestling, which is great. And I understand that Vince has got San Jose fixed now, that no other wrestling organization can come in. And
for next year's
WrestleMania, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I've never been a part of anything in a WrestleMania town, so I'm excited about being there. Not at all because WrestleMania's there. I've never been caught up in that fever. Of course, I never got a WrestleMania payday either. And I think if I might have got a WrestleMania payday, it would have helped me to enjoy WrestleMania and understand what it meant before. Not that I'm not saying that disrespectful or anything, but what I'm saying is this. People are, when we were in the Mid-South shut down in the early 90s, didn't it?
It was,
late 80s?
87, I believe, is when, when Crockett bought it.
How many years ago is that?
That's about almost 15.
Is that just
or
15?
not 15, 25, I'm sorry.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. Just look back over wrestling, and I mentioned Stone Cold and Vince McMahon. But in 25 years from now, who will a wrestling fan be talking about? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask those that's listening to this that question. You see, Cowboy Bill Watts, a big cowboy, he had the tenacity to take guys and take a group of guys. And I'm talking about the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, the Jim Cornette, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Hacksaw Butch Reed, Nature Boy Buddy Landale, Kamala, Captain Redneck Nick Murdoch.
JYD.
Yeah, well, who can forget JYD? He spent 10 years trying to figure out someone that would take JYD's place. But there was no one there that was going to do it. He went through Master G, George Wells. He went through Savannah Jack. And everybody trying to get someone to take JYD's place. Let me tell you something. A lot of guys, I don't think, liked working against Junkyard Dog. He was limited. But Junkyard Dog drew money for Vince and them, I'm sure, for other promoters, for Bill Watts, even on my shows that I had him on at the end. But getting back to what I was getting ready to say was, and the Fantastics, Jake the Snake Roberts was there. My goodness, so many guys. It's hard to think of everybody. But Eddie Hot Stuff, Eddie Gilbert and Sting, Jack Victory, John Tatum. My goodness, the missing link. Now my mind's really running.
Rick Steiner.
Rick Steiner, the start of Rick Steiner. But what I was getting ready to say was, of today's wrestling, how many people and who will they be talking about 25 years from now that leaves that lasting impression? And can I tell you something? That might mean something, because it's just like a man I was talking to the other day that's an executive, and he said, you know what? He went through, you go through tragedies and triumphs in life, but when you get to the top of the mountain and you look back, you can't really remember how those tragedies took place. But what will cause a lasting impression to make people, and this is some advice for wrestlers, and I mean, I don't know how to do it, it's just done, but that should be your goal when you go to the ring, to leave a lasting impression. And I'm not meaning by pulling your trunks off or anything like that. You don't want to embarrass yourself, make everybody laugh. But I mean, working that hard to leave a lasting impression that will last 25 years. Is that not right?
Yeah.
You're a comedian, Rich.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Well, I mean, and like wardrobe is like a huge thing. You gotta find something that'll fit your style. Like
Yeah.
we talked about him the other day a little bit, Terry Sims. That guy always had like an outfit to come out to the ring in, whether he worked as Terrence Garvin or Terry Sims.
Right.
He invested a lot in
And a
like
pink mat.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
see, that's part of it. That's part of the thing. And then people could talk about it and saying, here's what I always wanted to do, and hope someone steals it. As a heel, I always wanted to carry me a little red carpet out and be standing at the corner, and then I would roll that red carpet out to where the referee, where they used to do it, they don't anymore, but they should, because the UFC checks them outside the ring, and some of the wrestling companies do, where they call them to the center of the ring for last minute instructions.
Yeah.
And as you walk, you take your time strutting down that red carpet. And I mean, you know, I guess young people today don't even know what it means when you said, well, I guess they do, because the entertainers walk the red carpet.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So say, for example, if I was a heel, I'd start walking that red carpet real cocky, and the people maybe start booing and go back, and then start again, get a little further, and finally walk out there. I mean, look at Gorgeous George. He sold TV after TV. I'm talking about the original Gorgeous George with his Georgie pins and the stuff that he did. It was outlandish.
All he had to do was yell, "Take your filthy hands off me."
Take your filthy hands off me. And I'll never forget watching a video where the oxygen thing and his valet was pumping it. And the ring announcer said, "Oh, brother, look, it says fresh Florida air." Talked about the smog in California, right? Even back in the 40s or the 50s. And he would, between rounds, then he would go, okay, you know, it's just great stuff, man.
And that was awesome back then, too, because it was right after World War II, and everybody, like, all these tough guys that just came back from winning the war, they wanted to beat up somebody that looked like that.
Sure, Gorgeous George, the sissy, the human orchid. And I mean, we're talking about him here in today's 2014, and, you know...
that was the 40s, 50s.
What a lasting impression, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
He was the first one to come out to Pomp and Circumstance, too.
Yep. As a matter of fact, I was telling Dylan that the other day. He said he was talking about that. Or was that you I told that?
No, you didn't tell me.
Dylan was talking about Pomp and Circumstances. I said that was originally Gorgeous George's music. Then the Macho Man Randy Savage came out to it, right?
Yeah. Do you remember Macho Man when he played for the Reds or the minor?
No, I didn't know. I knew I was, let's see, I started wrestling in 77, and they came into Michigan. It was, and I'll never forget them announcing the Poffos are coming. And you know, back then, I'd get national wrestling magazines like The Ring and some different magazines. That was my internet back then. I'd go to Anderson's drugstore in Chillicothe, and Anderson's still there, but a different building. And I'd go in there and I would get the magazines and read about Sweet Hansen and Rip Hawk in North Carolina and what was going on in Tennessee, New York, Bruno Sammartino, Mil Mascaras. But I never heard of the Poffos. And I'm thinking, what's a Poffo? Then all of a sudden it was Angelo and Lanny came with his bleach blonde hair, and he would do the little warm up before the match, and they wrestled a guy. I remember going to Dayton Hair Arena and watching. Well, as a matter of fact, Lanny had already had his head shaved by Flying Fred Curry, and Flying Fred was taking on Gentleman Saul Weingroff. The winner got tarred, the loser got tarred and feathered. And Randy Savage was wrestling there with a young guy who was, I believe, the Sheik's nephew or relation, Mike Thomas, who somebody said got killed or shot or something. I don't know, but they were the Mod Squad. But then I had never heard of Randy Poffo before that.
Were they the Mod Squad in Crockett's company at all?
No, that was another. That was Spike and Basher, Jim and Mac Jeffers.
Yeah.
And J.D. Costello was the manager. That was.
Didn't Dundee manage them for a while too?
Yeah, Dundee managed them, and they were in Memphis, Tennessee. As a matter of fact, when we worked against them, they were another great team. You know how I say, like a lot of people always correlate the Fantastics with either the Sheep Herders or with either the Midnight Express. Either Midnight Express, whether it was Condrey and Eaton or Lane and Condrey. But you know, that was another great team. The Mod Squad, Jim and Mac Jeffers, and one of them just passed away, I think. And if not, I'm sorry to say, I thought someone had told me that. I'm not for sure, but they were from South Carolina, and then their manager was J.D. Costello, and I'm trying to think of the Guerrero brothers, Hector and Chavo. We wrestled against in Mid-South and Houston and this and that.
Yeah.
And everything, so.
Did you guys, I noticed, because I have some of the old Crockett Cup tapes, did you guys ever wrestle like against the Thunderfoots or?
No, I knew Gene Ligon, and I think Joel Deaton was the other one. But no, I never wrestled at them as that. But I knew them. I wrestled against Joel Deaton with Billy Black, I think in Georgia or somewhere. I was with them in Japan, but I don't think we ever wrestled those guys.
I saw Gene Ligon do some stuff for WWF.
Yeah.
In the 80s on television.
Gene worked a long time. Wrestled a long time.
He's on Facebook.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He has a gym in Concord, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've segued into working in wrestling. Everybody today says I'm a worker. Nobody says they're a wrestler. Nobody says they're a professional wrestler. I just wonder why everybody got away from saying. I remember on the dressing room door when I was a kid, you know what it would say, Rich?
Professional wrestlers?
It'd say wrestlers only. Yeah. Wrestlers only, and that meant no one else. But the sign's gone. That's like the other night, I was just joking. I walked in the dressing room and yelled, "Kayfabe." I don't know if he was in there a time or two. "Kayfabe!"
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't hear
They
that.
kind of looked around, but it's kind of funny to say.
I heard that was actually Gorilla Monsoon's license plate.
Probably. Yep. It probably was.
Did you ever meet Monsoon?
I met him a couple times. I met him a couple times.
I met him at WrestleMania 8 in the hotel.
I met him one time. We were wrestling on a show for Jack Worley up in New Jersey. Me and Tommy used to go there and wrestle a lot for a lot of different people because the world-class TV was pretty strong up in there. And they would take us to Wildwood and Bricktown and different towns and places like that and wrestle for Dick Worley. It was Dick Worley.
He was a referee.
Yeah, nice, super nice guy.
I think he actually helped start King Kong Bundy.
I probably, but they had shows and Gorilla Monsoon would come by and say hello to all the guys every once in a while, you know. But I'm sure I met him when I went up there when I was younger. Like I said, at 17, because man, all of them was there then. From Bruno to Ivan and Stan Stasiak and Captain Lou Albano and the Grand Wizard, Chief J. Strongbow, of course, and tons of people was up there.
Yeah. What's your favorite movie about wrestling?
Movie about wrestling?
Yeah. Did you? I'm not going to say The Wrestler. Yeah. But did you ever see that one movie that Vern Gagne did, The Wrestler?
No, I never. You gave me the copy. I ain't watched it yet.
It was pretty good.
I heard of it.
There's some other
Murdoch
good
and his
ones.
Dusty Rhodes.
Did you ever see Body Slam with Roddy Piper?
No,
I think.
but I will tell you this.
Oh, I know what you would say. I like to hurt people.
Yeah, I like to hurt people. Of course, that's to do with the Sheik and them. And that was my favorite wrestler, him and Wild Bull Curry. You know, Abdullah the Butcher, who I still stay in touch with. You know.
Yeah.
I respect you know, I grew up, Pampero Furpo was another guy, as a matter of fact, who lives in California. And I seen him on a thing. I think his daughter does some stuff. And he looks great. He's 80-some years old.
That was my one of my best friends. That was his dad's favorite wrestler.
Pampero Furpo.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was really something. He wrestled as the missing link.
Was that before Dewey Robertson?
Oh yeah, this was in Hawaii. They called him the missing link in Hawaii, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably about 5'6", but I've seen him in matches way back with Argentina Rocca. So he must have wrestled from the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe up until 80s. I'm not for sure. You know, he was great too. What a presence! As a matter of fact, he was the first. Oh yeah. You know, and then. Oh yeah, man, Macho Man, Randy Savage, man. He coming to the studio no more, man. And he was the other. Oh yeah.
So did you work for the Poffos?
I worked for Jerry Jarrett now, and Jerry Jarrett, they had been rivals for a long time. Then they come to some sort of working agreement, and when that happened, Jerry Jarrett and them would send me to some Poffos towns. And I would meet with them somewhere. That's how I met Tony Falk. And I would go to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, as a matter of fact, or someplace like that, and wrestle for them. I worked a couple times for them, not very much.
Do you remember Miss Elizabeth when she was like an interviewer?
She was selling the tickets, I think. She's a nice lady.
I think they said she did interviews early on too.
Well, she may have, but I thought she was selling tickets. As a matter of fact, I wrestled in a few towns in Kentucky too, and I thought she sold the tickets. She might have Liz. I think they called her Liz.
Yeah.
Liz then, or maybe they always called her Liz and just called her Miss Elizabeth. Yeah, but I never really talked to her, but I remember her being there. Of course, she's pretty, you know.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't notice her?
Yeah.
You know, but like I said, I think she sold tickets, this and that. But I never really formally knew her. You know?
Yeah. I was watching shoot. I guess you call it a shoot interview. It was an interview about like behind the scenes, and it was with Missy Hyatt, and she was saying how they loved working with you guys because like you didn't just phone it in. You guys put together a match and like it was all different and everything. She said the only thing that annoyed her was it took about 45 minutes for you guys to get to the ring because of all the girls around the ring.
Sometimes that was good. That was the good old days. As a matter of fact, I watched that, and people up at Chillicothe, they're running to me today. They'll happen to go now with YouTube, you know, and say, "My goodness." And they said we noticed a couple of times they had to drag you to the ring to wrestle.
Did you ever get your bow ties stolen or?
Well, we used to in Texas. They almost used to have to put us over their heads. Those guys with the cowboy hats, all the bodyguards they had down there. There were some real nice guys.
Yeah.
And everybody knew them too. I mean, it was on world-class TV. The guys with the cowboy hats, the bodyguards. You know.
Yeah.
We would have women follow us home, and we'd lose them, Tommy and I, and we'd drive real fast this way and that way and this way and that way. Then we'd get home, and there would be pizza stacked up at the door.
Did you ever eat them?
I can't remember. I can't remember. I should remember if I can remember them being there.
I was just wondering, like, if they were like fresh, or if like they'd been there for a long time.
I'm sure they would have been fresh.
Or if they would have been there, been waiting there.
You know
a long
what?
time.
I'll tell you one thing right now.
Yeah.
All those wrestling fans, all those girls, they really helped us with our wrestling. because they would go and talk about the wrestling. And part of grassroots advertising is word of mouth.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, my goodness, we met a lot of great people, wrestling fans, you know, male and female.
It's getting a little dark in here, so it looks like you're in the witness protection program.
I just went into it when you started talking about girls and going around the ring. I did go in the witness protection program. It's not in your set. Please don't be alarmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am, about except from the forehead on up.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I burnt my head, top of my head. I think I told you that at the beginning of
this.
But
you said you had a great match with Christian York.
Yep, Christian York and Angel Ashabita's son, Richie. I came down and I went down and wrestled for a promoter named Chris.
And he's the son of the original Cuban assassin?
Yeah, the one from Canada, Angel Ashabita, who helped me up there, man, was a big help. Played some ribs on me, but helped me get into Memphis the very first time. And I told Richie to tell his dad, I said, look, what? You talk about backdrops and flying. Man, it looked great. The Cuban assassin Angel was great. And as a matter of fact, I told his son after the match, I said, you're a chip off the old block, buddy. What a great wrestler. I mean, you know, Rich, just because you have a pair of trunks and boots or don't have a pair of trunks and boots doesn't make you a great wrestler. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. We got a little bit of light here in the tunnel. What was always your favorite finishing move when you wrestled by yourself?
Well, I always did something. I used to do where I jump on it's called a victory roll, where you jumped on the shoulders and you would do a forward roll. I did that a lot.
Yeah.
Or the basic, just a quick win, sunset flip. I didn't have any big finishing moves, you know, as far as that goes. It was just something fast.
Yeah.
Because I was usually the smaller guy, and I just wanted to, you know, beat him in a quick way if I was winning. You know what I'm saying as far as that goes.
Yeah.
If I was losing, I'd be crying over in the dressing room, squalling. I had a towel I'd be biting on, crying in it. Sometimes they used to have to bring in a big old beach towel. I'd be over. At first they'd tell me, they said, man, you're going to win. All of a sudden I'd be over there working out, doing push-ups, jumping jacks, working that cable out, man, getting ready. They said, man, we made a mistake. You're going to have to put the guy over. I'd go to him and say, oh, man, my shoulder's been killing me. My knees are bothering me and my neck's really bad. How quick we turned.
It's called Bobby Fulton getting in the car at the gas station.
Did you read that thing, man, about Leanne Rhymes? She's totally broke.
No.
Lost every dime she's got.
And
the guy ran off.
We're filming Bobby. So Leanne Rhymes is not in good shape.
No, it's what they just said in the National Enquirer.
Well, that's bad.
Yep, you can film me. Anything I say can and will be used against me in the court of Zabadov. Zig Ziglar. Heck yeah, how can I do that?
You're gonna have to make a Yui.
Way down here. That's crazy as crap, ain't it?
Yeah. So have you ever been to that Mayberry town, Bobby?
Not many times. I used to run my Tough Man in there annually for about 17 years.
And you went to Floyd's barber shop?
Oh yeah. Yep. Sure did. Is that the interstate right there we're supposed to get on? It's now 1:30. We've made a drive all the way down to North Kakalaki and back.
This is the Before the Blonde tour.
Before the Blonde tour. And tomorrow, Lord willing, I'm going to get my hair turned blonde. And it's going to be the blondes have more fun. Well, scratch that. Not blondes, but Christians have more fun tour till it's over.
And then you go to the Mid-South Legends.
Mid-South Legends event. Then I'm going back and wrestling in South Carolina.
And that's
and that's April the 5th, and then April the 6th, I'm going to be speaking in a church down there. I think it's called Solid Rock Church. And
what city is that in?
It's down around Boiling Springs, South Carolina. So I'm going to have a good time. Remember me in your prayers. I remember you. Thanks, Rich, for going down, and we had a good day.
Okay. Awesome. Peace out.